copying in school, not a good thing. Somebody does something outside of school, that looks good, do exactly the same thing.
Okay, Anthony, thank you so much for joining us today on This Is Purdue. We're thrilled to talk to you. This is the latest episode of our Boilermaker Bites series. So we have some lovely snacks and tea that are set up. Tell us a little bit about this before we dig into Westwood and your journey, okay?
Yes. So we have the classic English cucumber sandwiches. So the cucumbers on thin sliced bread with no crusts. Then we have some profiteroles with some gold dust, of course. Ooh. And then some macarons with poppy seeds and key lime. And then we have some homemade scones.
And there's a big debate. You made them, right?
I made them, yes. I made them this morning. There's a big debate on how you pronounce it. Some people say scones, some people say scones. I'm a scone side, so... And then when we eat them, there's a big debate as to which you put on first, is the jam or the cream. And I'm jam first, then cream. So that's just the way I do it. But a lot of people are wrong. So.
Well, thank you so much for having us here.
You're
and
welcome.
For making
this
lovely arrangement. We're at Westwood. This is the home to Purdue's presidents. You've been here as the estate manager and the event coordinator for over 20 years.
Yes, 24 last month.
Oh my goodness, congratulations.
Thank you.
So you're actually from the UK, though. I'm sure our listeners can tell.
Sometimes. Everyone in England thinks I have an American accent. So.
Okay. Well, we're excited to get into your journey. Like I said, you know, this property is so beautiful. Mm-hmm. I'm sure no day is the same for you.
No, which is actually one of the good things at 24 years. If the days were all the same, you wouldn't be able to do it. So I think that having variety and, you know, different events and different things going on and different people coming in and out and, you know, projects that don't involve guests as well, all of that type of thing, keeping the outside looking good and redoing the driveways and all those type of things.
Yes, absolutely. Well, tell us about your journey to West Lafayette. Since we do know you're from the UK, yes. How did your experiences overseas kind of set you up for success here?
Right. Yeah. So my father was in the Air Force, so I was a military brat, if you'd like it that way. So we moved a lot when I was growing up, and we lived in Hong Kong and Singapore, then returned to England where I finished my high school, and then did catering college for 2 years, and then went to work in Switzerland for a year, and then came back and finished my degree at Oxford Brookes University, and then got into, almost by accident, working at Blenheim Palace, and that then turned into Sutton Place, being the butler there at 21, which was a little bit daunting. My first guest was Prince Philip, and so it was a little overwhelming at times, but did that, and then went back into the restaurant industry, then had a call from somebody who said, would you like to teach? And so I moved to Switzerland again and taught in a hotel school there, and then had an opportunity to do a work abroad project with Iowa State, ostensibly for a year. And so I left Switzerland intending to come back, and I haven't gone back yet. So that was 34 years ago. And so I think that overall travel and just being involved in international hotels and restaurants and seeing things from that perspective is really what started me interested in the events business and catering and that type of thing.
You talked about working in palaces in the UK. How did those experiences set you up for what you do today at Westwood?
I think it gave me the opportunity to see, exactly how, things should be done, and, just the attention to detail and how to look after people, and, working with people from, higher ranks, if you like, and royalty and all those type of things. So I think it set me up quite well as being able to handle guests of every caliber and every background.
So you came to the States. Mm-hmm. And that's where you met former Purdue president Martin Jiske.
Right. Yes, that's right.
And so how did that story come about?
So I was there, as I said, for a year. And then during that year, I think for the first time, people sort of really tried to nurture me and continue my education. And so it was suggested I take my master's degree there at Iowa State, which I did. And then the Jiskes arrived during that period, and certainly were well aware that they needed somebody to be more involved with the event side of things, because the previous president had not done as much entertaining as they wanted. And so they asked me to do a couple of things just to help out to start with. And then it developed into part-time, full-time, and then 8 years working with them at Iowa State. And yes, it was a wonderful opportunity.
So how did they ask you to come to Purdue? How did you finally end up here?
So there was a big debate in Ames as to whether I would or whether I wouldn't go. And it was actually the Des Moines Register put more interest in my leaving than them. So it was, will you go, won't you go, will you go, won't you go? And so I flew here with Patty and Martin on a couple of occasions to look around and see whether we could like it, a pleasant surprise. And so I said, okay, I'll come for 6 months and see how it is. So I lived in the apartment above the garage for 6 months and got used to being here and decided I liked it and said I'd stay. And that was, as I said, 24 years ago.
24 years
ago. Yes.
So tell us about your role at Westwood. I know every day is different, but what are some of your duties and responsibilities here?
So basically keeping the house looking as good as it can. I have a team of wonderful housekeepers, Sheila and Tammy, and they do a fantastic job of making sure that the house is always ready, because you never know when the president's office may call and say, somebody's coming over. And you can't be sort of just suddenly rushing around. So keeping the house ready, then obviously with the events, working with the president's office in making sure that we're up to date on what's happening, who's coming, making name tags, making place cards, and then obviously working with Chef probably once a week to see what events we have coming up. Because there are weeks when we have fewer events, and then there are weeks where we have lots of different things. Yes. And also during the day. I'd say that Mitch used to entertain more at breakfast time because he was, there was no family and people getting to school and things like that. So we did it more entertaining in the mornings and with him. But no, it's I say the variety is what keeps it interesting, and obviously the seasons and the things inside outside the house as well. So yeah,
it is gorgeous here. It's fall right now. The leaves are stunning.
It is. It's beautiful. The leaves are a pain when they come off the trees, but they're pretty when they're on. So yes.
Yes. What is one of your earliest memories of Westwood?
I think the first time when, as I say, Patty and I traveled with Martin to come to see what West Lafayette was like. And I remember driving through the gates. Iowa State's president's house is like many Big Ten schools right in campus. And we had parking for about 5 cars in the driveway. And I drove in here and you've got almost a mile of drive. And so, just the setting was very, very different from what we were used to, and just a sort of a sense of a big house, and then seeing the spaces that we had to work with was wonderful, because again, the Iowa State house was Victorian, and so it wasn't necessarily designed or easy to use as Westwood is. And Westwood is very versatile, as we've hosted events for 8 people or 250 people, so it's a lot of things like that. So. Can I pour you some tea?
Yes. Oh my gosh, please do. And we have to try one of the homemade scones. Did I say it right?
You did. And so this teapot is actually from the short china that was given to the house back in the 1990s. And we have some pieces. Unfortunately, it's aging, and so it does need some care, and it's not always leaking, but this one is not, so we're good so far. Yes.
Do you enjoy milk with your tea?
I do take milk in my tea.
Okay. I do too.
And we're doing it the right way, because if you put milk in first, then that's very
good to know.
And that's where the phrase MIFT comes from. MIF, milk in first. And people who put milk in first are second class.
We're learning all types of things on this podcast today.
All right, we'll give you a sandwich.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to talk about napkins on laps too at some point, okay?
Yep.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so fast forward, President Jischke leaves in 2007.
Yes.
What made you want to stay here at Purdue?
And we knew that Dr. Jischke was going to retire in 2007, so that was all expected. And then when Dr. Cordova and Chris Foster came here on a sort of a sightseeing trip visit, I was obviously here and was cooking breakfast for them. And then, they sort of said, "Will you stay?" And I said, again, yes, we'll give it a try. And so, yes, it's sort of become a hand-me-down thing. I think you get the house, you get him too. So.
I think they're thrilled to have you, though, with the house. So what has it been like for you to experience the Midwest, back when you lived in the UK? Could you ever picture yourself where you are now?
No, I really didn't. And when I was in Switzerland, some of my students there said, "You'll absolutely hate it. You won't fit in. You'll love it. That would be awful, and you won't like it, and you'll be back, and you won't even stay a year." So I was somewhat not worried, but trepidation, I'd say.
Sure.
Because I called a bank in London and said, "Can I set up an account in America?" They went, "Oh, not sure. Where are you going to live?" And I said, "Iowa." They said, "Ooh." I said, "We think there's a bank in Des Moines." And I thought, well, have to drive 20 miles to a bank. That's not the worst thing in the world. And then you arrive in Ames and there are multi-story hotels, a huge stadium and massive buildings. You think, "Oh, we'll be okay." So,
absolutely.
Yes.
What are a few of your most significant memories from your 24 years here?
Gosh, I think entertaining some. We've had 3 secretaries of state come to dinner: Madeleine Albright, Colin Powell, and Condoleezza Rice. So that's been wonderful. The Secretary of the Navy. So I think it's Guess and Laura Bush. When the convocation happened for her and the 2 girls. So that was interesting, especially the time constraints placed on us for that event were amazing, because they wanted a 3-course meal in 37 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
So it was very, very tight timing, but we pulled it off, and everyone went away happy. But I think so it's the guests and the different personalities of people. And the nice thing about Westwood is that it is, as many people call it, the front door to the university. And so we have students. I'm hosting the Reamer Club come on an annual tour, the freshman Reamers. And so they come on a tour of the house so that they know when they drive the train around that, what is behind those doors,
sure.
If people ask. And then we have faculty. So we have a faculty event. We have deans tonight. We have a faculty event most months. So it's a nice use of the house for people who are on campus, and then obviously alums coming back.
Yes.
And we entertain many people. So I think that variety is great.
We've discussed, you've lived through several presidents here. Do you have any fun behind the scenes stories? Anything that would surprise our listeners, maybe?
You'll have to wait for the book. No, I don't. I mean, I think things just happen, and in 24 years, it drifts away. But I suppose the cat's coming in by mistake is interesting. That suddenly somebody comes to me and says, "Here's a cat," because they live outside and keep our mouse population down. But occasionally they manage to sneak in. We had a dog, and so that was also a challenge at times.
Was he or she in the way?
No, she was never in the way, but she would sometimes escape from the kitchen and be in places that she wasn't supposed to be. And also like to get out and go and find the dirtiest, muddiest places to roll, as dogs do. No, I'm trying to think of anything else. Obviously, the gates have been an issue when power goes out. I'd get phone calls from the president saying, "I'm stuck outside the gate," so I'd have to drive over and climb the gate in the rain and release the hydraulics on the gates and open the gates so that they could come in. One time we had a power outage, and the president at the time was trying to pack for a trip. And so we had to get the Purdue Fire Department to bring one of the fire engines, or the fire truck, sorry, I'm not in England anymore, a fire truck up here and plug it in so that they ran their generator so we could have a light in the packing area so that they could pack the suitcases.
Wow.
Other other than that, I don't think we've managed to keep it pretty sane.
Sure. How have you
in front of the scenes anyway, not behind the scenes?
Yes. How have you seen this iconic home change over the years? We were chatting before this, and there's been all types of renovations and...
Yeah, so the house has morphed from a 2-bedroom cottage when it was built in 1934 into 17,000 square feet that it is now. When we came in 2000, the house footprint was pretty much as it is, and so we've made some tweaks. We've changed some things. We added a different porch last summer, so we've made alterations. The house, I think, is pretty much at its maximum footprint now. There's really not much more room for anything, but it works well. And what was put in, especially with the big addition that the Beerings did, has made the house incredibly functional. We have the catering kitchen and the big dining room that we can seat 104 in if we have to. It's tight, but we can get in. And so, it is a very workable house. So I think that's really the biggest change. And people, when they drive up, they don't realize just how much house there is at the back, really. So
it's so stately and beautiful. Yes. But yes, you don't really see when you haven't been inside before, you haven't seen the depth of the house.
Yes.
So I know you said no day is the same, but walk us through a typical day when you're setting up for maybe a dinner like we are today.
Yeah, so typically we usually have a fair amount of notice about when these events are happening. So obviously we know what the room's going to look like. Depending on the table, we'll see the table another occasion, but the table is fairly versatile in that we can seat up to 22 at one table. And the president seems to like that feel of everyone being at one table.
More intimate.
Because once you separate people, and if the First Lady is there, she can host one table and he can host another, but it still separates the guests. So we've done a lot more events with the big long table. And I will already have talked to chef, and we've planned the menu, and we do try and feature as much Indiana food as possible, just because people like it, and we're using Student Farms produce at the moment as well. So we've already planned the menu. So then prior to that, I will give our two housekeepers, as I said, Tammy and Sheila, a list of what china we're using. We have 5 different sets of china. So depending on the time of day and maybe the type of guests that are coming, we make a choice of which china pattern we're going to use. And so they'll get that ready for me, and then I'll put up the tables, put out the chairs, and then start laying tables. And typically if we have a big event, then I'll have set the tables up the day before and if we've got flowers to be done, I'll try and get those done and put in the cooler ahead of time. The another nice thing about Westwood is it does have a lot of garden space, and so we try, when in the spring, when we're planning or when we're planting the gardens, we try and have things that can be cut flowers. And Patty Jishke was instrumental in starting the cut flower idea, so that we can harvest a lot from the gardens as long as we don't, as long as we can. And so getting the flowers ready, and then having everything on the tables, and then our staff arrive usually about an hour prior to the event. By that time, we've probably got name tags out. I've done place cards, and usually the office will give us an idea of where they want particular people, but sometimes it was, certainly in France's day, it was all up to me as to where people went.
No pressure.
There was usually her table was allocated, or she specified who she'd like at that table, but the rest of it was just so there's that arrangement, that finalizing, and then getting the final bits out so the glass is ready for the rival drinks, and then always being ready for changes.
Yes,
and
pivoting.
Yes, that is the key to this game.
So speaking of that, a lot of our listeners and viewers probably don't know all of the behind the scenes details that go into event planning. It's a lot more than one might think.
Yes.
What are some, things that you've learned over the years when it comes to event planning and facing some challenges or having to make those pivots?
I think you definitely get to have a plan B, a plan C, and hopefully never have to use it, but a plan D just in case. So there's always that backup. and being ready for those changes, even if you don't want them to happen. It's just, you know that these things are going to take place. So I think that's always the key, is trying to predict the unlikeliness of things. And that does sometimes get to be a challenge when we're doing the one long table, because it fits 22, not 23. So if a 23rd guest comes, we have a real problem. We have had issues where the room has been full, and so we've had to suddenly grab a small table from another area in the house and just sort of throw some food and some silverware at it and go, there we go. Just, I think, anticipating what might happen. So we've always got extra food. We've always got an extra place sitting somewhere so that it's as fast as we can to get it in. People's diets, that they halfway through a meal they become vegetarian. So all right, we're going with that one this way. All right, yes, that'll be fine. So just adapting.
Sure.
And when I teach my classes, I always say, two of the key elements to being good is adaptability and flexibility. You've got to read the situation, work out what's going to make it happen, and then be ready for something not happening right. So,
speaking of your class, I want to talk about that. How did you become interested in teaching here? And what is the etiquette part? What does that mean for, modern day society? Why is it important to teach college students all of these different lessons?
So I got into it. When I was at Iowa State, a fraternity approached me and asked me if I would go in and do a presentation for a fraternity. And I thought, it's a one-off. And I would say that, over 34 years of doing these, how many thousand times I've actually given the presentation. So it's still popular. I still travel. I was in New Orleans in August giving it to a fraternity conference there. I'm speaking to next week and the week after to various agronomy classes. So that's also good. But I think it's something that people realize they should need. Many people may have been told by an aunt or a grandmother at some point, do this, and they go, yeah, whatever. And then they suddenly realize that perhaps that was useful and that they might find it helpful. My classes are usually full, which is great. So we have about 60, 65 students every semester. It's just an 8-week class. I do start out by saying a lot of this is common sense. The problem is that sense isn't that common anymore. So it's not rocket science.
Sure.
But it does help rocket scientists get better jobs. So I think what we're trying to do is make the students as comfortable as they could be in an environment that they're not necessarily used to. And being with your peers all the time and eating in the dining court, eating quickly, not worrying about things, and then suddenly you're placed in a situation where you do have silver, you do have plates, you do have glasses, and you're being watched.
Absolutely.
That's the deal. As that, your resume says a lot about you, but it's only two-dimensional. When you walk in the door and I sit you down and I watch you eat, I think, I don't think this is going to work. So that's why we do it. And I think, I'm pleased that professors do ask me to go to their classes and give a presentation. What they remember of it is entirely up to them. I've done it for the ROTC, and that one is a challenge in and of itself because they meet at 6 o'clock in the morning. So doing a presentation for people in uniform at 6 in the morning is interesting.
Now, tell us some of these tips that you're telling the students when it comes to networking, interviews over a meal. That's something I have always struggled with. I don't necessarily want to be eating and worrying if I have something on my face or eating too slow, eating too fast, right?
Right, and that is the challenge, and that's why they put them into that position, is they want to see, can you deal with this? And so one of the key things I say is, when you go to a meal, if it's somewhere that you're not familiar with, ask people what they recommend, and you can gain from that information whether or not these people even have an appetizer course, or if they don't recommend any appetizers, I probably won't be ordering an appetizer. Choosing foods that you can eat without using your hands, choosing foods that you can eat easily while still maintaining a conversation.
Right.
And so ordering something because you're trying to show off, or think, oh yes, I'll take advantage of this menu because somebody else is paying, is generally going to backfire on you. So making wise choices at the table, keeping pace with the rest of the table. And I do tell people, if they're hosting and the guest of honor is being bombarded with questions, it's their job to step in and say, let's have our guest eat a little bit and somebody else talk about their research project or what they're going to be doing this coming semester, whatever it happens to be, so that there's an opportunity for people to catch up. The other thing is to be aware of other people's needs. A lot of people are focused on their own little space. We do live in a selfie-ish world, and it's all about me. And so they don't think about other people. So passing things that are in front of them, seeing that somebody needs something. You've got a cup of coffee, the cream and sugar's next to me. Would you like some cream and sugar? Could I pass this to you? Or just keeping an eye on what's going around. I mean, they may be the guest, but if they're going to be hired by that company and they have taken an interest and said, could we get you some more water? Would you like another bread roll? All of those type of things show me that you are looking outside your own comfort zone and you are willing to take care of other people. So if I do hire you, I won't have any worries about sending you to a restaurant with our guests,
right,
because I know that you can do it. Balancing conversation and eating, and taking time to actually take the food and then answer the question. Don't try and do both. We have a lot of weaponizing of silverware at the moment. Students so making it look pleasant for other people. And
Sure.
I tell students, put yourself in front of a camera and watch yourself eat. And if you don't like it, this is why you're sitting in front of a camera.
Humbling.
So just little details like that, because it can come down to the fact that you are a better ambassador for yourself at
Sure.
the table, and that may be the key to me saying, you get the job, you don't.
I love that. It's like if you're attending to people's needs, you're going to be a team player.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to care for your coworkers.
Similarly, I mean, the way people present themselves. If you look like you're looking after your own clothes and your shoes are shined, it's likely to tell me that you're going to look after someone else's assets just as well. So even though your suit may not be the newest, if it's taken care of and it looks good, then it says to me, you can take care of things. So again, little details like that, shaking hands, making eye contact when you talk to people, speaking clearly, especially for introductions. People are so nervous. They speak so quickly and then you have to repeat it. And it's like, really? Slow down. Slow it down. And if you have to, say it again. Fine. Or ask somebody their name again. Everything. So we're trying to make them as comfortable as possible, and feel like their education is the starting point, but what they make out of their lives is something that they have to do. And have a wide range of topics to talk about, because if all you can talk about is your school, it's fine, but there's a bigger world out there.
Right.
And I also tell people, do some research before you go. If your interview's in Seattle, get the Seattle paper off the internet, read it, find out what's going on, so that when you go there, you can talk to people who live in Seattle about things that are happening in Seattle. And so they feel that you have tried to integrate yourself already,
yes,
rather than just assuming that everything is. And I ask my students in class, can you name me the mayor of Lafayette? No. Can you name me the mayor of West Lafayette? No. I say, you've lived here 4 years. You have to be able to think of it, because if you go to something here and you can't do that, people are going to think you really are so distanced from reality.
Sure.
So,
have you ever had students, I'm sure you have, come back to you and say, I was in a really tricky interview, or hey, I was at this networking event and I thought back to your class and what you told us?
I'd say that the thing that I've had most people comment on after the fact is the ability to hold a glass, a plate, and a fork in one hand. So you've got your plate, your glass, and your fork, and so your right hand is still free to shake hands, and you're able to deal with all of the food and drink in one hand, and you look sophisticated,
polished,
and you look polished, and you can multitask and you didn't need to write it on your resume. But I've had several students come back to me and say, I was the only one who could do it. Or I felt so comfortable because I knew what I was supposed to do, whereas everyone else was juggling things. So yeah, so that one's probably the one that I get the most.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So would you like one of these scones now?
Yes. I'm so excited because I don't think I've ever tried one with this cream. So yes. Tell us.
So English scones typically, and you always split them, you never cut them.
Okay.
And then we have, and usually you have red jam. We call it jam, you call it jelly. We call it jam. So you have to take some jam and put it onto your plate. Come off. And then you have some cream. And in England, you'll probably find it's clotted cream, which is hard to find here, which is a heated cream. So it's a little bit more weighty and fat content. Pass that over
Thank
to
you. Okay, so you're not taking the knife and directly putting it on, I've noticed. Okay.
No. Now, sometimes when we do reception events here, chef makes wonderful scones. We will actually split them and spread them so that people don't have to work with that. Because again, when you're designing food for large groups, you have to have things that are easy to eat and quick and easy to pick up.
Okay.
So then the key is to take a little bit of jam and put it on about a bite-sized piece of the scone.
So not the whole thing?
No.
Okay.
It's so complicated being English. And then you put some cream on the top.
Okay. And we did jam first, like you said. Okay.
Some people will even put butter first, then jam, then cooked cream.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The cream is insanely delicious.
Good.
And so is the scone.
Whipped this morning.
Oh my goodness. Okay, now see, I was also, see how I was taking both hands?
Mm-hmm.
Is that not?
You'll see people do that as sometimes. That's another thing I tell students is when I go around the class at the beginning of the semester, I ask them what their worst habit is. 75% of them say procrastination, which I can't do anything about.
Sounds like a college student.
Mm-hmm. And then the next one is fidgeting. Because they're always playing with things that were probably from growing up, they were always playing with a phone or a game or something. And so they don't, so sometimes that has now secured both of my hands and I'm not doing anything silly with them. Whereas if I have one hand free, people start to play with things, or they fiddle, or they play with their hair, or they
which in a job interview is just such a
so it's
turn-off.
distracting. So sometimes adding that extra hand just gives your hand something to do. But generally you would only hold with one. And stirring too, stir quietly. When people can ding, 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 ding. Really.
Okay, so in October, you received the Special Boilermaker Award, which honors a member of the Purdue faculty or staff who has contributed significantly to the improvement of the quality of life or the betterment of the educational experience for Purdue students. What did this honor mean to you?
It was a very special moment, and it was quite a surprise being told I had it, because I was at a meeting in Hovde and we were leaving the meeting, and Teresa Cadwallader, who's Mung's executive assistant, said, "Oh, could you just pop in here?" And I thought, what is this? And so she opened the door and ta-da! So that was a big surprise. And then obviously going down onto the field to receive it was a very special honor. So yes, it was a wonderful honor, and obviously my co-recipients, we had a great time, and so it was very, very special. I guess it's I don't know whether there's like a bingo card of things that if you're at Purdue this long, you get one of these, and if you get this long, you get one of these. So, I was in ARIMAs, I was in Iron Key, Mortarboard, Old Master. So, my bingo card's getting full. But yes, it was a very nice honor. Very nice. I'm very.
So the Special Boilermaker Award, that honors people who have made a difference in students' lives.
Yes, it's nominated from former students. So I had 3 or 4. I don't know how many people actually wrote in, but that was how it starts, and it's through the Purdue Alumni Association, Purdue for Life organization to nominate people, and so 3 people every year are nominated. So, and I've had many messages, and 450 messages on Facebook after it was Dean Eric Barker took some really nice pictures, and so they were on Facebook, so a lot of people responded to that. And then I had people text me who were in the Buchanan Club saying, oh yeah, 3 of us up here are also Boilermaker Award recipients in the past, and we're here cheering for you, and thanks for joining our ranks, if you like. So it was very, very nice. So
I can tell Purdue means a lot to you.
Yes, it does.
Why have you stayed here this many years? Why?
I sometimes ask myself the same question. I don't always give myself the same answer, but it has worked out really well. As I say, I started out expecting to be in the US for a year, and that turned into 34. I do love the variety of the US. Obviously, we're here in the Midwest, and we have our wonderful seasonal changes, which I really do enjoy. And I think it's nice to still have winter. Having lived in Switzerland and been in the snow for 3 or 4 months a year, you miss things like that if you were in a warmer state. So I really do like the seasonal changes. And particularly I enjoy gardening and things outside, so it's nice to see and to be able to make changes, and not that the landscape is going to be the same day in, day out as if you were in some other states to the west, maybe. So it's nice having that variety. The ability to travel relatively easily. I do miss public transport. Mm-hmm. I do miss European trains. But you get around here, but it is an easy place to move from and to go and see different parts of the country and travel. And so I think that the Midwest is and many people who travel from here after they graduate go and live in metropolitan areas, mm-hmm. but then eventually return to the Midwest because they say it's just a better place to live and to bring people, bring up families and things like that. So people are very warm. It's a very accepting and very welcoming community, and I think that's why I ended up staying at Iowa State, is that people probably said, we're interested in making you do something different and getting on with the master's degree, and then so. And that also goes back to one of the things I tell students is that yes, your degree may be in biomechanical engineering or whatever it happens, biomedical engineering. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to stay in that field. Absolutely. And if something comes along that says to you, that sounds interesting, let me try that. And I say at 22, you have nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. If you don't like it, great, you can try something else. And you can at that point probably still fit all your belongings into one vehicle. So if you need to travel, you can do it now. But because as life gets more complicated, it's a lot harder to make those changes. So, and I think when I first took my first job at Blenheim Palace, I didn't know that would lead to this. I mean, it was a one-off 3-week job for the Christmas holidays with the Duke and Duchess, and then would you come back full time? Yes, why not? And then, then everything just sort of transitions. So you can never actually predict what's going to happen next. And so I think I've enjoyed the fact that, having worked for 4 presidents, each one comes with a different background, different sets of needs, different requirements. So that has, in a way, I haven't really worked here for 24 years. I've worked here for 2.5. and I've worked here for 10, and I've worked here for 5, and I worked here for 7 with each of the 4 different presidents. So, that I think has sort of kept things fresh. To have stayed in one place, one person, one job, routine might not have been the case. And I'm not saying that people have tried to take me away from here. Purdue may be known as the cradle of quarterbacks, but it's also the cradle of presidents, in that we've had 3 provosts go on to be wonderful presidents of big schools. Sally Mason, Randy Woodson, and Tim Sands have all made wonderful presidents in their own right, and all 3 have asked me to go with them.
There's a behind-the-scenes story.
Yeah.
What is this Boilermaker community and being part of it mean to you?
I do really like living in Lafayette, West Lafayette. I live downtown, and when friends come to visit from England, particularly, we'll walk around downtown or go to a restaurant. People know you, they come up to you, they recognize you, they talk to you. I'll sit on my porch and people will say hello or stop and chat on the porch. And so it has a very nice feel that you don't always get in other countries, because people are either too busy or they feel that they can't talk to people because they don't know them yet, or they're not familiar with them. So there's a lot to the sort of the Midwestern warmth and welcoming feel. And as you know, and I know, when we travel to different states, it's not always the same. It does feel, you feel like an outsider in some states. So I think that the community itself is wonderful, and made lots and lots of friends, either from guests coming here or from working relationships, and then alumni and donors and people. And having traveled with Purdue as well, that's another really good way of establishing a bond of friendship with people that you may not normally have had a chance to meet.
Absolutely. So this is going to be released around the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get into some holiday party etiquette.
Okay.
So I'm going to do a couple questions on that.
A little more tea?
Yes, actually. It's delicious. Thank you. So for people hosting events or maybe attending events, what is a small, thoughtful gift that you could give to the host of a dinner party, let's say?
Yes, and the whole notion of giving gifts is changing. Gift giving, certainly in the corporate world, is now almost frowned upon, because it's a difficult gray area. And so one thing to remember is that the host has asked you there because they want you there. They didn't necessarily want you to bring anything. So there was, I think, in the past, almost an obligation that people felt that I have to take a gift. And that's not the case. If you feel like taking something, that's fine. The host will appreciate it, but don't feel that you can't go empty-handed.
Okay.
The other thing to think about is something that, particularly if the host is greeting you and you hand them this, then they've got to deal with it. So giving them something that they can easily say, "Oh, that's lovely, thank you," and put it down, and then it's out. They don't have to. So when people bring flowers, it's very, very pleasant, very nice. But if they're not already arranged or in some container, then I've got to deal with these now. Let me put them there, and then they should probably go in water. And if you've got someone, your event coordinator standing right there, yes, you can probably hand off a gift, but it makes it awkward for people. So particularly around the holidays, I think a small ornament or a handmade ornament, or if there are lots of little arts and crafts shops here in town that sell small gestures, those are nice. Commemorative ornaments are nice. Homemade food, if you're somebody who's very good at making chocolates or something like that, just a little gesture. If you are going to take flowers, as I say, take them already in a vase or in something that the host doesn't have to then deal with them immediately, that they can just be placed. And obviously also people have probably done their own decorating. They've probably already got flowers on the table. They've probably already got most of that. So unless you know them very well and you're just taking something that you know will fit in with the theme or the decor, it can be a little bit of a juxtaposition. A lot of people take bottles of wine.
Yes, I've done that.
Which
How
is
do you feel
fine.
about that?
It's fine. The expectation is that you take the bottle of wine and it's really a gift. Don't expect to drink it.
Right.
If you have a particular wine, so if we were planning a dinner party and you were cooking and I said, let me bring the wine, I would ask you what you're making, and then I would bring a wine that was appropriate, and we would both know ahead of time that I would bring the wine in a way that it was ready to be served by you, but you already knew about it. So if I bring a bottle of wine and I expect you to drink or to serve it, and it doesn't go with the food that you planned, or you've already planned your wines, again, that can be a little awkward. So if you bring it just as a gift, perfectly fine. But don't, as I say, expect to drink it. And I've seen some people awkwardly, if it hasn't been served, take it away with them at the end.
What?
So, yes.
Okay.
Well, they didn't drink it, so I'll take it back. All right. Okay,
I think it's awkward when they open it up and have it at this event. I was like, oh no, that was a gift for you. But if they want to open it, I get that.
Yes. And again, I think it requires you as a guest, if we knew each other well enough and I'd been to your house several times,
Right.
I'd say, oh, let me bring some of the wine that we had last time, or I know that you really like this Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, let me bring some. If you choose to serve it, entirely your choice. But if you don't choose it, then it's yours for the rest. You keep it.
And you do not take it home.
And sometimes host gifts, if they're wrapped, don't expect that the host is going to unwrap it then.
Oh, okay, that's a good tip.
So sometimes if it is a little ornament, just bringing it unadorned so that they can see it immediately, so that they don't have to then unwrap it and then thank you. They can say, oh, that's pretty, that's lovely, I'll put it on the tree, something like that.
Right, because they have enough going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you just don't want to confuse things. And that's why we have at weddings and big events a table for gifts that you can just put them on, and a basket for cards if people bring them. There's no absolute necessity to physically hand it to me.
Right.
And then, you can retrieve them and then thank people later.
Okay, small talk. Some people hate it. Some people are gifted at it. What are some small talk dinner conversation starters?
Right, so again, part of it, doing your homework. You don't have to be the NSA, but you can do a little bit of background. The other thing that people don't do particularly well is actively listen. So while a conversation is going on, you may have said something that didn't then get developed into a further conversation, but I picked it up. And so then when you and I are sitting somewhere, I said, didn't I hear that you just say that you were going to the Bahamas for Christmas? Oh, that'll be nice. Or, did you just come back from the Maldives? And any time that you can ask people things that make them want to talk is a good way, because it's a conversation. It's not me lecturing. It's you listening and then adding in and back and forth. So having actively listened or found out some details, or that you just got a new puppy, or that I saw in the newspaper that you just received the special Boilermaker Award, or you just became Small Business of the Year. All of those things I have stored that I can bring out and use if I need to. We've talked a lot about the change of seasons, and fall your favorite season? And giving people an open-ended question allows them to express, and then it should also then lead to further topics of things that we can talk about. Because as I listen, I can hear that you're someone who loves fall. Have you been to Maine or the East Coast? Oh, actually, we're planning that next year. Oh, well, how are you going to do it? By train? Or are you going on a cruise? Blah, blah, blah. And so it generates itself, but it needs someone to start the ball rolling. And people are afraid to just start a conversation because they don't know. So, it sounds mundane, but the weather is a great way to start. Did you have trouble getting here? I saw that it was stormy in Colorado. Was it, how was your journey? And people have then the incentive to give more information and make you feel that this is a conversation. And I sometimes equate it to a tennis match, in that your first topic is the serve, and you send it over the net. And you hope that someone on the other side of the net will hit it back, and then you hit it back, and it's back and forth, and we're adding to this conversation. We've all unfortunately been in the position where we start a conversation and people will not. And it's, okay, try again, let's go this way, and we're going to try it, and no, that one didn't work. All right, anyone else have anything interesting? So sometimes it is difficult, and some people just don't want to engage in that. But small talk is really important, because small talk leads you to big talk. Mm-hmm. You know, the ability, and the students on interviews, when they go, I say you won't be spending all the time with the interviewer. You will be spending time with assistants, with other departments, other areas, and you have to be nice to all these people. And you have to talk to them. When you're transitioning from this office to the HR department, we're walking. You have to be talking. You can't just leave it blank. Right. Even though this person may not be the person you're interviewing, and I'm going to ask them afterwards. Right. And we've all seen Undercover Boss. I tell them that. I said, the person that you go in to see who's sitting behind a desk isn't necessarily the person that you think it is.
Or being rude to a waiter or a receptionist, mm-hmm. right?
Well, especially at the CEO level, a lot of times when the dinner interview, the people are looking to see how you treat service. And if you treat them well, there's a very good chance that you'll treat employees lower down the totem pole than you well. So.
Right. Okay, the Irish exit. Are you familiar? The Irish goodbye, maybe?
That's not really a goodbye, you just disappear?
Yes, you just, you simply disappear. What is a polite way to, maybe the host is busy talking to someone else. Maybe you just want to get out of there as fast as possible. What's a polite way to
particularly a stand-up event or a reception-style event where it is a lot of mix and mingle, drifting around, and you may have commitments to other things at different times. The key is to try and make sure that your host knew you came. So making it not necessarily a beeline for them, but making sure that when you arrive, you see your hosts quickly, and so that they're aware that you did come, even if you're not going to stay very long. Then do a circuit through the room as best you can. And then always try, even if the host is talking to someone else as you have to leave, try and make eye contact. Just something that signals that they are, again, aware of the fact that you have left, rather than, I don't know where she went. I'm not sure. She was here just now. So if you can, just try and make, even if you have to slip away early, just try and make some contact with the host to say, this has been wonderful, but I do have to dash. Let's catch up next week. Sure. Something like that, if you can. Or, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to say, great party. Thanks for having me. We'll see you at the theater on Saturday, or something like that. Just, it makes them feel that it was a good idea to have you at the event, even though you couldn't stay for the full length.
And you appreciated the invite.
You've made an impression. So as I say, try and meet them when you first get there, and try and at least acknowledge the fact that you've had a good time and you're heading out now.
Okay, to wrap it up, the biggest do's and don'ts. What's like a top do this to impress people at an event, and a top do not do this at an event?
One thing is that you shouldn't necessarily be just out to impress people. You should be doing things well, but not necessarily standing out by showing off.
Okay.
So, keep it subtle, keep it light. I think we do find people who dominate the table. And I do tell people, when you're planning an event, think of the personalities that you've got. Because if you've got a strong personality, and you're hosting and we're doing a long table rather than a round table as we're at today, but if you have a long table and you've put somebody with a strong personality halfway down the table, that person will take over. And you have no way of controlling that. If you have a strong personality, seat them next to you, because you can physically rein them in if you have to, because they're right there. So again, that's a good way of working out where you're going to place people and who would be a good conversation group. Do these people have something in common?
Sure.
So it does that. So try not to dominate. If you realize that I've done all the talking, or nobody's had a chance to eat, Again, try not to do that. Also, good manners can spoil good food. So waiting or listening to somebody talk and the food's there, start somebody. Don't just let the food spoil. And that also brings up the buffet rule, that if you go to a buffet, it's very likely that the rest of the people at the table are not immediately behind you in line.
Sure.
And so when you get to the table, if there are 3 of you or more, you can start eating.
Okay.
Because those 3 people may not even arrive, or those 2 seats may be empty or unoccupied, and you've been sitting there waiting for them to fill, and your food is spoiling. So I always encourage people to use the buffet rule: 3 or more start. Chewing with your mouth open. I don't need to see your food. And eating noisily, just, sometimes it's overwhelming. Oh, all right. Yes. And these people are automatically getting a no for the next invitation list, because I can't, you're just not going to have people watch that again. So that's overindulging. There may be very nice things offered to you, but you don't have to necessarily take them all. And one thing I do tell students about events is that because when you arrive, it's likely hospitality is going to be offered quite quickly. Your choice of whether to take it then or not. You're perfectly able to walk away and say, I'll be right back. Let me do some introductions. Because yes, you might be able to hold a plate and a glass in one hand, but if you don't have to, don't do it.
Right.
So go around, make some introductions, and then circle back and get your drink. Circle back and get some food. And so again, sometimes that is a test to see whether people have the ability to say, no, I think I'll wait.
That's super interesting.
Using the buffet as your own private dining space, take some food and move away. If there's something on the buffet you don't like, don't put it back. Appetizers are not easy to eat standing up. We in hospitality love to watch people fail. That's why we design food like that. Things will break, drip, crumble. So, look at the food and say, can I deal with that?
It's exactly what I do at weddings.
Yes.
Can I
eat it neatly, cleanly, easily? Yes, go. No, I think I'll pass. Take 2 bites, a whole egg roll is offered to you. Yes, it would fit in one go, should it? No. So again, and dipping, one dip only, not turning the carrot stick over and dipping the other end in. Taking things to a plate, to a vessel, rather than just eating them out of the bowl.
Right.
And sometimes events aren't set up in the way that makes that easy, that you've got to find the plates, or the plates and the napkins are in the wrong place, and you really want to get a plate, go down, and then at the last minute pick up a napkin and a piece of silverware, because you don't need that for walking through the buffet. So it's just, again, I think it's a lot of it is learned, but unfortunately we don't see the opportunities to learn anymore.
Right.
I mean, I will set a table with a tablecloth and people suddenly, it's so formal, because they're just not used to seeing tablecloths anymore. Suddenly this makes it difficult. This is something that I'm not used to. And so that's sometimes hard for people to deal with.
Intimidating.
Sitting down before everyone else arrives, not good, because then anyone else who arrives at the table, even if they're on time, they feel that they're late. So in a restaurant situation, you're hosting, you're waiting in the lobby, try and wait for all your guests in the lobby before you go to the table, even though the restaurant wants you to sit down straight away.
Okay.
If I arrive at 12:30, which is when I'm supposed to be there, and you're already at the table and I'm the last there, I say, ooh, am I late? Because it's a psychological feeling that I didn't make the right call. So, and if somebody does arrive late, get up and greet them and help them to their chair. It makes them, again, feel less self-conscious about being late.
This has been fascinating.
Thank you.
Is there anything I missed? Is there anything else you want to tell our listeners and viewers?
Gosh, no. Listen, learn, and if copying in school, not a good thing. Somebody does something outside of school, that looks good. Do exactly the same thing. You can learn a lot by watching people. Oh, and when you split a check evenly, don't argue. No divisions of, well, you had 2 glasses of wine, so you, plus tax. And then, you see people,
uncomfortable.
Yes, you see people having this wonderful meal, great conversation, and then they're arguing about $26 at the end. It's like, really? That's all I'm going to remember when I walk out, is that you were trying to short me for $2. Not worth it.
That's a great tip to end on.
Thank you very much.
Oh, it's been a
wonderful.
pleasure.
Thank you.